When daylight left the village, imagine standing in a small European village. Not the Europe we know today. There are no streetlights, no cars passing through the narrow roads, no distant sound of traffic, no glowing windows filled with televisions, no phones, no electric heaters, and no clocks telling everyone exactly when the night will begin. Instead, there is snow. Snow covering the fields. Snow resting on the roofs. Snow filling the narrow paths between the cottages. And above everything, a pale winter sky slowly losing its last light. It is late afternoon. The sun is already sinking behind the hills. The day has been short, much shorter than the summer days these villagers remember. And everyone knows what that means. Night is coming. In a modern home, sunset does not necessarily change the rhythm of life. The lights come on. The heating continues. The kitchen remains bright. People can stay awake for hours. But in this village, darkness changes everything. The evening is not simply the end of the day. It is the beginning of a different part of life, a quieter part, a slower part, a colder part, and somewhere near the edge of the village stands a small wooden cottage. The cottage is not impressive. It is low. Its walls are made from timber, stone, or a mixture of whatever materials were available locally. The roof is heavy with snow. The windows are small. The door is thick. Inside lives a family. The father has been outside most of the day. He has been working, perhaps cutting wood, perhaps repairing a fence, perhaps caring for animals, perhaps carrying supplies through the snow. Whatever his work was, he knows that before the evening is over, one task remains more important than almost anything else. Firewood. He must make sure there is enough. Because during a winter night, wood is not simply wood. It is warmth. It is light. It is cooked food. It is hot water. It is comfort. And, in the harshest weather, it can be the difference between a tolerable night and a dangerous one. The father finally appears at the door. He carries an armful of firewood. Snow clings to his boots. His coat is damp. Cold air follows him inside when he opens the door. For a moment, the entire cottage seems to become colder. The children look toward him. The mother turns from the fire. Someone closes the door quickly. Not because there is danger outside, but because warmth is precious. Every breath of freezing air that enters the cottage is warmth that must later be replaced by the fire. The father places the wood beside the hearth. He looks at the flames. Not casually. He studies them. The fire has been burning for hours. It must last through the evening, and perhaps through part of the night. A piece of wood shifts. A tiny spark rises. It disappears almost immediately. The father takes a tool and moves the burning logs. The fire suddenly becomes brighter. Orange light spreads across the room. For a moment, everyone's face becomes visible. Then the flames settle again. This fire is the center of the home. Around it, almost everything happens. The mother prepares the evening meal. A pot hangs over the flames. Steam rises slowly. The smell of food mixes with the smell of smoke. The smell of burning wood has become so familiar that nobody notices it anymore. It is simply the smell of home. The children sit nearby. One may be playing with a small wooden object. Another may be watching the fire. The youngest may already be tired. Perhaps he has spent the afternoon outside. Perhaps his cheeks are still red from the cold. The grandmother sits close to the warmth. She may be repairing clothing. sorting wool, preparing something for tomorrow, or simply resting. The grandfather is nearby. He has seen many winters, perhaps more than anyone else in the cottage. He knows the sounds of the house. He knows which floorboard creaks. He knows which part of the roof makes noise when snow begins to slide. He knows the fire. He knows when the wind is becoming stronger. And he knows that winter nights are long. Outside, the village is slowly becoming quiet. One family returns home, then another. A door closes. A dog barks somewhere in the distance. Then another door closes. The footprints in the snow become fewer. The path that was busy earlier is almost empty. And slowly, the village begins to disappear into darkness. The first window goes dark. Then another. Then another. Soon only a few small points of warm light remain. From a distance, the village looks almost asleep. But inside the cottage, the evening is still alive. The family is eating, talking, moving, preparing, and listening. Because when the world outside becomes quiet, the sounds inside become much clearer. The fire crackles. A spoon touches the edge of a pot. A chair moves across the wooden floor. Someone coughs. A child laughs. The wind presses against the walls, and somewhere above them, the wooden roof makes a small sound. A quiet crack. Everyone continues what they are doing. It is nothing unusual. Wood changes with temperature. The house settles. The cold outside meets the warmth inside. The materials respond. The cottage is constantly moving in tiny ways. But to a child lying awake later that night, those sounds may feel very different. For now, however, the family is still awake. Dinner continues, and the longest part of the winter day has only just begun. The last hours before sleep. After dinner, the family does not immediately go to bed. There is no reason to rush. The night is long, and there are still things to do. The mother begins clearing the dishes. She moves slowly. There is no dishwasher waiting nearby. Everything must be washed, cleaned, stored, or prepared for the next day. Water may need to be heated. Utensils must be put away. Food must be covered. Anything that could attract animals must be secured. The cottage is small. Every object has its place. Every corner matters. The father checks the door. He makes sure it is properly closed. Then he looks outside. The darkness is complete now. Snow continues to fall. The air is sharp. He can see little. Perhaps the moon is hidden behind clouds. Perhaps the snow itself reflects enough pale light to reveal the path. He steps outside again. The cold immediately surrounds him. The door closes behind him. Now the village is almost completely silent. His boots press into the snow. Crunch. Another step. Crunch. Another. He walks toward the place where the firewood is stored. There is no guarantee that tomorrow will be mild. There is no guarantee that the snow will stop. So the wood must be ready. He picks up several pieces, carries them back, opens the door. Cold air rushes into the cottage. The children move away from the doorway. The father enters. The door closes. Warmth begins returning. He places the wood near the hearth. Perhaps he has collected enough. Perhaps he goes back once more. This is part of the winter routine. Firewood is not something you think about once a week. It is part of everyday survival. The mother knows exactly how much can be burned. A large log might keep the fire going for a while. Smaller pieces may be useful later. Dry wood is especially valuable. Wet wood may smoke heavily and burn poorly, so the family learns the personality of its fire. They learn how much wood it needs, how quickly it consumes fuel, how warm the cottage becomes, and how cold it becomes when the fire falls too low. Meanwhile, the children are becoming sleepy. The youngest child has stopped playing. His head begins to fall forward. His mother notices. She smiles. Perhaps the grandmother notices too. The child is carried toward the sleeping area. The sleeping arrangements are simple. There may not even be a separate bedroom. In a small cottage, sleeping space can be part of the same living area. Privacy is limited. Space is precious. Warmth is precious. And the family uses whatever arrangement makes the most sense for the household. Beds may be made from wooden frames. The surface may be filled with straw or other plant material. Blankets and woven coverings are placed above. Compared with a modern mattress, it would feel remarkably hard. But to the people sleeping on it, it was normal. The mother begins arranging the bedding. She smooths the blankets, adjusts the straw, makes space for the children. One child climbs in. Another follows. The youngest is placed where he will be warmest. Brothers and sisters may sleep close together. In some households, several family members share sleeping spaces, not because anyone considered it unusual, but because homes were smaller. And because body heat mattered, there is something comforting about this. The children are not sleeping alone in a separate room at the end of a hallway. They are surrounded by family. They can hear their parents. They can hear the fire. They can hear the wind. And if they wake during the night, someone is nearby. The grandmother may remain near the hearth for a little longer. She watches the fire. The flames have become lower now. There are more glowing embers than tall flames. She moves one piece of wood. The embers brighten. Orange light spreads across her face. Then she sits quietly. The children ask for a story, perhaps the same story they have heard many times. The grandmother begins. Her voice is soft, slow. The fire crackles between sentences. Outside, snow touches the roof. Inside, the story continues. Maybe it is a story about a traveler. Maybe about a forest. Maybe about a winter long ago. Maybe about someone who became lost. And because the night outside is so dark, even an ordinary story can feel mysterious. A child listens. His eyes become heavier. The grandmother continues. Her voice becomes quieter. One child falls asleep before the story ends. Another tries desperately to stay awake. The mother smiles. The father listens. Eventually, the story ends. There is a brief silence. The children are asleep. The mother covers them again. She adjusts one blanket around a small shoulder, then another. She makes sure no child is exposed to the cold. The father adds another piece of wood. The grandmother finally rises. Everyone begins preparing for the night, and then comes something we rarely think about today. The final light. There is no electric switch that turns the entire cottage bright. The family may rely on candles, oil lamps, rushlights, embers, or other forms of simple illumination depending on the place and period. The light is weak. The room is mostly shadow. The father checks the surroundings. The mother makes sure everything is in order. The fire is left in a condition that can continue safely through the night. And one by one, the family settles down. The cottage becomes still. The children breathe quietly. The adults lie down. The grandmother closes her eyes. The fire continues burning. And outside, The snow keeps falling. The village is now almost completely asleep, but the night has only begun. The hours between midnight and dawn. Imagine waking in the middle of the night. You do not know the time. There is no glowing screen beside you, no digital clock, no notification, no bright light. You open your eyes. For a moment, you do not know where you are. Then you see the faint red glow of the hearth. The room is almost completely dark. The fire has become embers. You can hear breathing. Someone beside you moves under the blanket. The wind is still outside. You hear it against the walls. Whoosh. Then silence. You close your eyes. A few moments pass. Then, crack. You open them again. A sound from the roof, or the wall, or perhaps the fire. You listen. Nothing. The cottage settles again. You pull the blanket closer, and slowly you fall asleep. This is what makes a winter night in an old cottage so different from a modern night. Silence becomes enormous. Every sound has space around it. A piece of wood falling inside the hearth can sound surprisingly loud. A gust of wind can make the roof groan. Snow sliding from the roof can produce a long, rushing sound. A door somewhere in the village can echo faintly. And because there is almost no background noise, the smallest sounds become noticeable. Sometimes one of the adults wakes. Perhaps the cold has disturbed their sleep. Perhaps a child needs attention. Perhaps the fire has become too weak. The father rises. His feet touch the cold floor. He moves quietly. He does not want to wake the children. He approaches the hearth. The fire is almost gone. Only a few red embers remain. He takes the iron tool, moves the embers together. A small glow appears. He adds dry wood, waits. Nothing. Then a tiny flame. Then another. The wood begins to burn. Crack. The fire grows. Orange light fills the room. For a few seconds, the entire family appears in the flickering light. Then the flames settle. The father returns to bed. The cottage becomes dark again. But there is another problem that modern people rarely consider. What happens when someone needs the toilet? There is no bathroom down the hallway. In some households, an outdoor privy might be used. But stepping outside into a freezing winter night is not pleasant. And during severe weather, it can be extremely difficult. For that reason, night vessels or chamber pots were used in many historical settings, especially for children, especially for elderly people, especially when the weather was severe. Imagine a child waking in the darkness. He whispers for his mother. She opens her eyes. What's wrong? The child tells her. She sits up. The room is cold. She helps him. There is no bright light, only the glow of the embers. Then she settles him back beneath the blankets. She pulls the covering over his shoulders. She touches his hair and quietly tells him to sleep. A few minutes later, the cottage is silent again. Outside, the snowfall becomes heavier. Snow accumulates on the roof. The weight increases. For a while, nothing happens. Then suddenly, whoosh, a large sheet of snow slides from the roof. It hits the ground below. The sound is surprisingly loud. Someone wakes. A child, perhaps. The father opens his eyes. He listens. Silence returns. Nothing is wrong. Everyone goes back to sleep. But the sounds continue. A branch moves outside. The roof creaks. The fire snaps. The wind passes through a gap.
And slowly, the hours disappear. 1 hour, then another. Perhaps it is 2 in the morning. Perhaps 3. No one knows. The night seems endless. This was one of the strangest things about life before modern lighting. Darkness was not simply something that happened after dinner.
It was a physical environment. People lived inside it. They moved through it carefully. They slept inside it. They listened to it. And they learned its sounds. The grandfather, perhaps, would know the difference between ordinary wind and a dangerous storm. The father would know when the roof needed checking. The grandmother would know the sound of the fire. The mother would recognize the breathing of her children. The family slowly learned the personality of their home. Every house had its sounds. Every roof. Every door. Every floorboard. Every piece of wood. And in the darkness, those sounds became familiar companions. The deepest part of the night is often not the loudest. It is the quietest. Imagine that the storm has finally weakened. The wind is no longer pushing against the walls. The snow is falling more gently. The fire has settled into a low glow. Everyone is asleep, and suddenly, the cottage feels almost suspended in time. No one speaks. No one moves. Outside, the village is buried under snow. The roofs are white. The paths have disappeared. The trees are heavy. The fields are silent. It is difficult to imagine that people will soon walk through this landscape. For now, everything is still. Inside the cottage, the family sleeps. The father lies beneath heavy coverings. The mother sleeps nearby.
The children are curled together. The grandmother is resting. The grandfather breathes slowly. And the fire continues. Not with large flames, just embers. Red, orange, dark, red again. Then, a sound. Perhaps snow melting near the roof. A drop falls. Tap. Another. Then silence. The temperature outside has begun to change. Very slowly. The first signs of morning are still far away. But winter mornings often announce themselves subtly. The darkness becomes slightly less deep. The black sky begins turning gray. The snow outside becomes visible again. Not because there is sunlight yet, but because dawn is approaching. Inside the cottage, someone moves. Perhaps the mother, perhaps the father. One child turns beneath the blanket. The grandmother opens her eyes. For a moment, she simply listens. The wind is weaker. The fire is low. The village is still. Then, somewhere in the distance, a sound. A door. Someone else has awakened. The day is beginning. Slowly, very slowly, the father sits up. He looks toward the hearth. The fire needs attention. He reaches toward the embers, moves them together, adds a small piece of wood. The first flame appears. He waits, adds another. The fire grows. The room becomes warmer. The mother wakes. She begins preparing for the morning. Water, food, clothing. The same small tasks that have begun thousands of mornings before this one. The children, however, do not want to wake. They are warm. They are comfortable. Outside is freezing. One child pulls the blanket over his head. The mother laughs quietly. Come on. The child does not move. She tries again. Still nothing. Eventually, the blanket moves. A sleepy face appears. The child looks toward the fire, then toward the door. He knows what awaits him. Cold air, snow, work, morning. He slowly gets up. His feet touch the cold floor. He immediately regrets it. He runs toward the warmth. The fire crackles. The mother begins preparing something warm. The cottage slowly becomes alive again. And then, the door opens. Cold morning air enters. The father steps outside. The world has changed overnight. The snow is deeper. The roofs are heavier. The path is almost gone. He looks toward the woods. Firewood must be collected again, so he begins walking. Crunch. One step. Crunch. Another. His footprints appear behind him. The village is beginning to wake. Another door opens. Someone else steps outside. A dog moves through the snow. Smoke rises from another chimney, then another. Soon the quiet village begins to breathe again. The sound of an axe comes from somewhere nearby. Thud. A pause. Thud. Again. The sound travels through the cold air. Children emerge. Someone carries water. Someone feeds animals. Someone clears snow. And the cycle begins again. The same cycle. Every winter morning. Another day, another night. The strange thing about life in these villages is that winter was not one dramatic event. It was repetition. The same cold, the same fire, the same work, the same evening, the same night. Day after day, week after week. The father goes into the forest or toward the woodpile. He cuts what is needed. He carries it back. Sometimes the wood is heavy. Sometimes the snow is deep. Sometimes the weather is calm. Sometimes the wind is dangerous. The children help when they are old enough. The mother works inside. Clothing needs repairing. Food needs preparing. Water needs heating. The house needs cleaning. Animals need care. Nothing happens automatically. Every small comfort requires work. If you want warm water, someone must heat it. If you want bread, someone must prepare it. If you want warmth, someone must collect the wood. If you want light, someone must provide fuel for it. And because every task takes effort, people learn to live with less. By midday, the village is alive. Smoke rises from the chimneys. The snow reflects the pale winter sun. Children play outside. Adults work. The grandfather may sit near the warmth. The grandmother may work with wool or cloth. The youngest children remain close to the adults. And somewhere, someone is chopping wood. Thud, thud, thud. The sound becomes part of the village. Then afternoon arrives. The sunlight begins to fade. The shadows become longer. The temperature drops. People begin returning home. The father carries another load of wood. The children come inside with snow on their clothing. The mother closes the door. Warmth begins to gather again. The fire is revived. Dinner is prepared. The same familiar smell fills the cottage. Smoke, wood, food, wool, cold air, human warmth. The family sits together. Perhaps they talk about the day. Perhaps there is laughter. Perhaps someone tells a story. Perhaps the grandfather remembers another winter. The children listen, and slowly, the evening becomes darker. Outside, Snow begins falling again. The first flakes land on the roof, then more. The village becomes quieter. One house goes dark, then another. The family finishes eating. The mother clears the table. The father checks the firewood. The grandmother settles into her place. The children become sleepy. The same ritual begins again. Blankets, beds, fire, stories, silence. The youngest child falls asleep first. The older children follow. The adults speak quietly. Then, even their voices disappear. The final flame becomes smaller. The glowing embers remain. Outside, the snow continues. And once again, the village becomes a world of darkness. There are no screens, no clocks, no electric lights, no constant stream of information. Only a small family inside a small cottage, surrounded by winter. The fire makes one last sound. Crack. A piece of wood breaks apart. The embers glow, then fade slightly. The wind passes across the roof. Whoosh. Snow moves softly. A little more falls from the roof. The family sleeps. And perhaps this is the part of their lives that is hardest for us to understand. They had less, much less, but they also experienced something that has become increasingly rare, a complete separation from the outside world. When night came, night really came. When the village became quiet, it was truly quiet. When people went to sleep, there was almost nothing left to distract them. The darkness forced people closer together. The fire became the center of the evening. Stories became entertainment. Family became company. Silence became normal. And sleep was simply another part of the rhythm of life. The day began with the fire. The day ended with the fire. The father collected wood. The mother prepared food. The children played. The grandparents watched. The snow came. The snow went. And the cycle continued. Perhaps that is why, when we imagine one of these old cottages today, we sometimes feel something strangely familiar. We have never lived there. We have never slept on straw. We have never woken to snow covering a wooden roof. We have never had to carry firewood through a freezing forest just to keep a room warm. And yet, there is something comforting about the image. A small room, a warm fire, a family sleeping nearby, snow outside, wind against the walls, a grandmother telling a story, a child slowly falling asleep, and the sound of burning wood filling the darkness. Perhaps the nostalgia does not come from remembering a life we actually lived. Perhaps it comes from imagining a life that was slower, a life where the evening had nowhere else to go, where the night could simply be the night. Where the most important thing after sunset was not what was happening somewhere else in the world, but whether the fire would last until morning, whether everyone was warm, whether the children were asleep, whether there was enough wood for tomorrow, and whether the storm outside would finally stop. So imagine that you are back inside that cottage now. The family has gone to sleep. The fire is glowing. The snow is falling. The village is silent. You hear the wind. Then, a small crack from the fire. You hear the wooden walls settling. You hear snow sliding softly from the roof. Someone turns beneath a blanket. The fire glows again, then becomes quiet. There is nothing else to do, nothing to check, nothing to scroll through,
Nothing waiting for you, only sleep. And somewhere outside, the snow continues covering the old village, roof by roof, path by path, until everything becomes white and the little cottage, with its warm fire and sleeping family, disappears into the winter night. By morning, the world will begin again. The fire will be rebuilt. The wood will be collected. The bread will be prepared. The animals will be fed. The snow will be crossed. The children will wake. The grandfather will sit near the warmth. The grandmother will begin another story. And when evening returns, the same fire will burn again. The same roof will creak. The same snow will fall. And another long winter night will begin.